The Stars and Stripes show is brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.
Well, it's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. And of course, welcome back to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy. Look, are you a bird fan? Do you appreciate these aviation creatures? Well, listen up. Today, we're going to explore the wonders of natural world and dive into the captivating topics that unite us all. In this edition, we embark on a fascinating journey into the realm of world bird migration. Imagine a breathtaking spectacle as countless avian travelers take to the skies, and they travel from the Arctic to the African continent, from one side of the world to the other side. And of course, this has been an awe-inspiring phenomenon that has captivated human beings for centuries, evoking a sense of awe and wonder as we witness the remarkable abilities of these incredible birds. Personally, if I was to choose an animal, right? Any animal in terms of my spirit, I'd definitely be a bird, because I love to travel. And of course, moving swiftly along, pun intended, we're crossing over into the Meet America policy discussion, and we'll be speaking to our good friend Natalie Patton. She serves as the Environment, Science, Technology and Health Bilateral Lead at the U.S. Embassy. She's no stranger to the show. Welcome back, Nats. How are you?
I'm great. Hi, DJ Swift. It's good to see you, and it's great to be back on the show.
Fantastic. How was your week?
It was, I think I said Fast and Furious last time I was on the show. It's Fast and Furious, never a dull moment.
Fantastic. Well, look, let's go straight into it as we celebrate and discuss World Migration Bird Day. Why are birds important to us, and what role does the U.S. Embassy in Gaborone, invest or in line with conservation of birds? Why should the average Botswana really consider the importance of birds?
Right. So, it's been said the longer time that we spend in Southern Africa, the more interested we are in birds. We move here, and the first things we notice are the megafauna. We're sort of entranced by the elephants and the rhinos and the giraffes and all these big creatures. But then the more time we spend, we really start to focus on the birds and just this vast spectrum of biodiversity, the glorious birds that Botswana has to offer. And, after a couple of years of living here, I can say that I am officially a bird nerd. I've crossed over into that territory.
Okay, nice.
So zooming out, we can't really talk about the conservation of birds without mentioning, big goals such as climate and biodiversity. But as far as our embassy's contributions to bird conservation, zooming in, we've seen a whole of government approach to water security, which it not only impacts human health and the environment on which it depends, but also wildlife populations, including birds. As, virtually all migratory birds rely on water and some type of wetland habitat during their life cycle.
Yes.
So a few examples of what the U.S. government has done on water security this past year. USAID just closed out a 5-year, $32 million program called Resilient Waters, which aimed to build more resilient and water-secure communities and ecosystems in Southern Africa. About a month ago, we had a team of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and U.S. Geological Survey scientists. They hosted what's called a shared vision planning workshop with the Okavango River Basin Water Commission, also known as OKACOM, and member states, and leading exercises to define threats and weaknesses of the Okavango River Basin. And then last year, more specifically with birds, our office brought in an embassy science fellow, an ornithologist, which is basically a bird expert, an avian ecologist who worked with members of CASA to develop a bird conservation strategy so that all of the member states of the CASA region can kind of come and get on the same page in terms of what's our plan to conserve our birds, especially the endangered ones. And together they wrote a shared conservation plan for bird species along the waterway borders. So the U.S. government actually employs thousands of scientists from a full spectrum of disciplines, and there's a special kind of magic when science people collaborate cross-culturally. They speak the same lingo and they're sort of dialed into the same frequency. So for me, it was definitely energizing and perhaps inspiring to witness our scientists interacting with some of Botswana's top conservation experts and others in the region, all for the sake of bird conservation.
Absolutely. Well, it's Gabs FM Power to Engage Your World, and we're talking World Migratory Bird Day. Forgive me, I try and swallow that word, but I will do my best. Let's talk about biodiversity conservation, especially as it being a key USG initiative.
Yes, absolutely. So for biodiversity conservation, the U.S. government supports the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and that includes the 30 by 30 target, which aims to conserve and protect at least 30% of the Earth's land, internal waters, and marine areas by 2030. And, Botswana is already meeting biodiversity goals, conserving most of its land and key waterways such as the Okavango Delta, which is a rich environment for migratory species of birds.
Well, it's Gabs FM Power to Engage Your World. Feel free to engage us and give us a shout on 395-6962. Do you love birds? Are you somebody who does not understand their role to our environment in our everyday life? And of course, Natalie, let's continue and talk about, how the whole government approach on water security and how that relates to, bird conservation. I know you did touch on pockets of that in my previous question. And of course, in line with the USAID and their roles and the various stakeholders associated to this.
Yes, of course. So, water security is, this is something that Botswana, it can possibly be an issue. We've seen a lot of drought. I know this past year has been one of the worst in the last 40 years, from what I understand. So, water security is always something that we're looking at. We've done projects with the Ministry of Agriculture as well, and farming. It all connects. The entire ecosystem and what we like to call One Health. So, human health, wildlife health, and the health of the environment, they all connect. And so, all of those components, work together for the health of everybody.
Absolutely. And of course, let's touch on how does the U.S. government and the United States and the American people and the U.S. government lead the world in terms of bird research. One thing that I was reading about offline is that, the role that birds play within the agricultural space. And it's such an important conversation to understand that, the role of research in terms of policy can even inform our agricultural space and how to sort of navigate those areas. Let's talk about bird research.
Sure. So, Swift, I believe you have been to Washington, D.C.,
Yes,
correct?
I have.
So maybe you visited the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. That's the one with the big elephant in the rotunda.
I did.
Yes, of course. So when people think of Smithsonian, they usually recall this most popular museum of the Smithsonian. But what a lot of people don't know is that the Smithsonian Institute, it was established in 1846 by an act of Congress. It actually encompasses a whole network of institutions that make up the world's largest museum, education, and research complex.
Wow.
So there's more than 210 affiliate museums alone, as well as research facilities for scientific collaboration around the world. And when it comes to birds, nobody has the specimen collection like the Smithsonian. So I actually just returned from Washington a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
And when I was there, I got to go deep into the bowels of the Natural History Museum where they keep all of the birds. There's more than 600,000 specimens. So 8,300 of the known 10,000 species of birds, they have preserved in this giant vault. Birds in every color, size, from all corners of the earth. They have birds that used to belong to former U.S. President Teddy Roosevelt and John James Audubon, where we get the nonprofit, the National Audubon Society. They even have a number of birds that have gone extinct that are well preserved. So it's a bit like time travel. I mean, can you imagine seeing a passenger pigeon or an ivory-billed woodpecker or a bright green and yellow Carolina parakeet? That's a really gorgeous bird that used to populate the American South until it became extinct in the late 1800s.
Well,
so
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's sad to see so many unique varieties in North America that are now long gone, but they also serve as a reminder of what happens if populations aren't protected elsewhere. And so all of these bird specimens, they're available for science researchers around the world to come study at the Smithsonian. They can even send these bird specimens out as well. A lot of people don't know that. So birds are just one example, but the whole mission of the Smithsonian, it really extends beyond having just a big, pretty museum for tourists to visit, but it's really for scientific collaboration, not only for researchers around the world to learn from us, but also for us to learn from researchers around the world.
Absolutely. Look, on that note, as we close the show, let me ask you this last important question. What's your favorite Southern African bird, if I may ask?
I would have to say my favorite Southern African bird would be the glorious lilac-breasted roller. You know, the colors like none other. But since it is World Migratory Bird Day, I've got to give a shout out to the flamingos as well. They're pretty special birds.
I like that. Well, it's Gabs FM Powered to Engage Your World. Thank you so much, Natalie, for being part and parcel of the day, and of course contributing to the Stars and Stripes radio show on World Bird Migration Day. And of course, Natalie Patton serves as the Environment, Science, Technology and Health a bilateral lead. On the other side of this, I think it's only fitting that we play I Believe I Can Fly. 12:25 is your time. On the other side of this, we're going to continue conversation, and we're going to hear from the voice of the BW government, the voice of the Botswana, the voice of an important stakeholder on the Stars and Stripes radio show. Good afternoon.
The Stars and Stripes show is brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.
Well, it's Gabs FM Powered to Engage Your World, and of course, welcome back. Allow me to introduce my guests in studio as we cross over into the partner spotlight. Dr. Moses Silabatso, welcome to the show. Motsadi Waka, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good afternoon.
Fantastic. And of course, a good friend of mine, welcome to the show, Re Puso Dimapo, BirdLife Botswana. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you, Swift?
So both of you understand the power of birds. My assumption is you've studied them. You understand their role towards our everyday life as Botswana.
Yes, definitely. We have done a lot of research to try and understand the ecosystem. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Look, let's get straight into it. And I think, Buso, you're not a doctor, so let me start with the doctor for protocol reasons, okay?
I think that's a good idea.
Dr. Moses, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to share this important, knowledge about World Migratory Bird Day. As we've talked about it numerous times on the show, wildlife knows no boundaries, and Botswana is right in the path of migration for countless species, but especially birds. What months do we see the greatest number of migratory birds, and what hotspots within country can bird lovers go to appreciate this phenomenal species?
Yeah, thank you very much, Swift. I think first I need to greet all the listeners out there. My name is Moses. I work for the NGO called Kalahari Research and Conservation. Our focus is to do wildlife research and study ecosystems. We have a dedicated program called Raptors Botswana, which is looking at birds of prey. And talking about a Birds Migratory Day, we need to also make the listener understand that the migration is actually a purpose of the species to understand or to benefit from changing availability of resources. So they have to move from one place to the other in a systematic pattern to benefit from the varying availability of the resources. And Botswana, obviously sitting in the southern part of Africa, and we benefit from some of these migratory birds coming to Botswana, particularly during the summer period. We have birds coming all the way from the Palek system in the Europe, around the Russia area, or coming all the way down to Southern Africa, and obviously to Botswana is that. And then we also have those that we call inter-migratory species within Africa that sometimes go just to the middle part of Africa and then come to Botswana. Usually during the summer, like I said, when we're expecting the first rains around October, November, that's when you see most of these migrants come into Botswana.
And what do our aviation friends bring? Obviously sometimes the average Botswana in layman terms doesn't understand that, these birds contribute significantly. For example, in the farming or agricultural space, surely they bring some contribution towards the environment and our soil. And are you able to link or correlate that for me?
Yes, I'll try to make it as simple as I can.
Please, I'm not a scientist.
Yes. I think the first thing that people need to understand is that every single animal, bird, has a specific role in the ecosystem.
Oh, nice.
Such that if you were to remove one species from the ecosystem,
Yes.
the whole system will not operate the same.
Nice.
And chances are that we will be risking losing more species because that particular role, if it's removed from the system, then we have a problem. Talking about birds, particularly, because most of our migrants are birds of prey, those that eat meat, if you like. And when they come, especially in the plowing fields, sometimes they come because of availability of insects and sometimes even small birds. So they play a role, in particularly for agricultural purposes. When we have some of the eagles in the system, they control our what you may call pests in terms of some birds, some insects that would otherwise, compromise our food security. So it's important that we do all we can to make sure that those migratory birds find our country to be a good habitat because they do help in that regard.
Thank you. Well, it's Gabs FM Power to Engage Your World, and we're talking World Migration Day on the Stars and Stripes radio show. Puso, let me bring you into the conversation, Motsadi Waka. Let's talk about, the contribution and the role of birds and what you do as you represent BirdLife Botswana.
Well, thank you, Swift. Like you mentioned, my name is Puso Dimap. I'm with BirdLife Botswana as the Environmental Education Officer.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So talking about birds and migration, it's a very interesting topic, like you mentioned. So first, like Dr. Selbazo mentioned here, migration is such a sophisticated, systematic, process going on right now. It's going on actually right now.
As we speak.
Okay. So we have received some of our summer visitors. Some of them were still expecting them.
They don't have passports, do they?
No, they don't. They don't have boundaries. So, on my side, for my education and the conservation side, this is a very good time because I deal a lot with schools, with school children. So having to talk about it and for it to be happening, it's such a very good time for me to relate what I've been teaching them in class and for them to see now these feathery friends are arriving and singing out there.
So from an education point of view, what would you like to inform Botswana in terms of understanding our bird life and why our bird life is important towards our environment, our everyday life? Because these are topics that often sometimes one would look over. These are topics that, depending on your educational background and what you do for a living, that you might not be interested in. But they're important topics for Rona as Botswana, as Sechaba sa Rona to understand.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, first thing first, Motswana Kolapen need to understand that for us to have birds around, it's just a special feeling to hear them singing every morning, them displaying their colors and stuff like that. And for the educational side, if we take it back into the years, we'll understand that birds played a very important role in agriculture as well because they were used as indicators. So most of our birds will come in summer,
yes,
and they come in different times. So different species will come at different times of the year. So for Botswana who didn't have calendars or watches by then, yes, they'll use these birds to actually mark. Now it's about the time where I should prepare me
So indigenous knowledge.
Exactly. Yes. So that's a very important role that they are playing. Even though it's a bit in with the issues of climate change and stuff like that. But generally they were used as indicators.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Moses. Let me bring you back into the conversation. Look, there are many bird enthusiasts around Botswana, around Gaborone, and around the country as a whole who might be interested in coming to Botswana during migration season. Look, when is migration season, number one? I know Puso did mention it. And in your opinion, what bird species are most noteworthy for us to watch out for?
I think the most obvious one will be the flamingos that are around the Makari system.
The ones that Natalie loves so much.
Yes, I'm sure my colleague here will speak a lot about them because they've been working very closely with the communities around that area. And some of them are actually raptors. We have a lot of raptors that are migrating. The one that I think most people are not aware of is the yellow-billed kite.
Yellow-billed kite.
We call it Mkhodi.
Okay.
Yes. people don't understand. Some of them don't even realize that it actually disappears from April to about July, August.
Wow.
And then comes from the earliest one will come usually around August and so forth. So we have quite a lot of them, like I said, some that are coming from within Africa and some coming from across the world. So yeah, and then Botswana is a dry country generally.
Yes.
And the best places to do a lot of bedding is to go to the water bodies. We're talking about our dams, talking about our Okavango Delta, our lakes and so forth. This will be the best places to go around this time to see most of these beds.
Absolutely.
I spend most of my time in the Kalahari area, that side. The good thing about the landscape there is that there's not a lot of tall trees.
Okay.
So it's easy to see most of these. Yes. So there's some of those areas that I would encourage people to go. The Central Kalahari Game Reserve. But like I said, all our water body, the Chobe River, the Okavango and so forth. So these are all the best places to go. Yeah.
And I think it presents an interesting opportunity for the creative sector in terms of, bringing those birds to life through painting, drawing and things like that. Because there are many ways that we need to invest in edutainment to a certain extent, to understand bird life, to attract Bana Barona in the education space, in the classroom. And of course, those of us who are adults in terms of understanding the various species that are available for us. But let me ask you this, Dr. Mose, given your background in wildlife conservation, you know how important it is for water and how water plays a sustainable role in, bird migration and of course various bird populations. What would happen if Botswana were to continue to have a prolonged drought? And of course, let's also talk about the role of birds and the roles of birds in terms of agriculture, because I think many Botswana thought we invest heavily in our agriculture, but it's important for the farmer to understand your bird life plays such an important role in terms of, and I think this is the correct scientific way of saying, a balanced ecosystem.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. Yes, I mentioned that water is a very important resource where we see most of our migratory birds. But water plays a critical role in the life generally.
Yes.
Birds depend on the food, and it could be plants, it could be insects, it could be anything. That will also depend on water. So if we were to lose our water resources through climate change or otherwise, it means then we will lose the source of water for these animals, because it's also one of the reasons why they come to this country.
Yes.
The other reason will be that then you will lose the source that actually provide for their prey. Their prey here meaning the animal, the insects and the birds that depend on.
Yes.
Some of them eat seeds and so forth. So if we lose water, then we'll definitely lose a lot of our ecosystem. And already, Botswana, like I said, it's a dry land. It's a dry country. We are actually most vulnerable to losing our water system, and it to become a very sad thing. Natalie did mention that Botswana has dedicated a huge chunk of its land for conservation. We are doing way better than a lot of countries in that regard.
Absolutely.
So obviously the water is the main reason why we can sustain our population. So if we were to lose that which we have invested a lot in, it will be a very big loss. Not only about ecosystem functions, but also Botswana depends a lot on tourism. This brings a lot of resources into our country, and we have all the reason to do everything we can to protect it.
Let me ask you, and forgive me for digressing, it comes from a point of view of interest. I see a lot of birds go to landfill, and I see that tall, it's got long legs, that bird. I don't know what's the name of that bird. Do any of you know? And why is it that we see a lot of birds around, the landfill and, something that's of that sort?
I believe it will be one of the storks.
Stork bird.
Yes. It's one of the storks, and I know that we also have a huge population of some pied crows.
Okay.
What is the name? The pied crow, I think it's a common one. It's a black and white bird.
Okay.
It's quite common. Well, there's a good thing and a bad thing about it.
Yes.
The good thing would be that then they sort of control the amount of pollution that may be taking place in that area, in terms of some of if there's too much food out there which is not utilized by anything, obviously it's not good for the environment. But the sad side of it is that some of these landfills actually contribute to overpopulation of certain species. Much as we want to have our birds, we don't want to have an overpopulation, because when you have an overpopulation, when that food resource is depleted, they will go somewhere else and they become a nuisance. So we don't want that. So we want a balanced ecosystem, like you said, in terms of agriculture. I know that when you talk about birds of prey, particularly the eagles and the hawks and so forth, most farmers, chicken farmers and all that, will not like the idea, but they need to understand that they actually play a big role in controlling some of the birds that are considered to be pests, the quelea, if you like, and all those that when they come into agricultural field, if you don't have some of these raptors, it becomes a problem. Actually, in Pandamatenga, they have started using some of the raptors like the hawks and the eagles to try and chase away birds from the field. So they are a very useful resource. It's just a matter of sometimes, of course, like I said, they end up eating chicken, but you have to come up with means of trying to prevent that without necessarily killing the birds, because they play a critical role in the ecosystem.
Who would think we'd learn so much today about birds? So let me bring you back in the conversation. The correlation between water and bird life, and it's important, especially I consider you an educator, okay? You're an educator, and of course my job on this particular platform, being the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the US Embassy, is to sort of educate Botswana on the role of the birds. Hence I'm also, trying to get different points of view from the both of you. Talk to me, Puso.
Yes, thank you so much, Swift. Like Dr. mentioned here, water is a very important resource when it gets to birds. More so that, you can imagine a bird migrating all the way from the UK all the way to Botswana. Definitely they will need water for simple reasons, to drink. And some of these birds, their food is from the water again. Take your swift, take your swallows, take your cuckoos. So they depend from these water bodies. So if in any case our water, we lose some of our grounds for water, our ponds, our rivers, it will be a challenge for these birds. One, they won't have enough food, and again they will find a way of swifting from their route to actually where they can get water from. So if their normal route is to pass through Gaborone Dam or Boka Dam or the sewage ponds, then they will have to go all the way either to South Africa or the neighboring countries to look for water, and that on its own, will disorientate the systematic way of migration. So it will be a very big challenge.
And education is important. It is Gabs FM, power to engage your world, and you're on the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the US Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. And of course, today we're talking World Bird Migration Day and its importance to our everyday life. So let's continue conversation. And we spoke about the beautiful flamingo. Natalie did mention, and one of the most notorious birds to grace Botswana during migration season, especially in the Makgadikgadi pans. Is it true though that flamingos feed on tiny shrimp lying dormant beneath the pans? And my question is, how did that dormant shrimp get into the pans to begin with? And of course, are there any threats to flamingos? We also have to talk about, endangered species. I will touch on vultures just now, but these are important conversations to have.
Yes, they are. So flamingos are one of the interesting species that likely they do occur and breed here in Botswana during the rainy seasons. And yes, they do feed on shrimps. And these shrimps, they lay dormant under this dry land for a period of, for as much as we don't have our rains. And they are not the live shrimps per se to say they live under this dry mud. So they live on what we call the shells or the eggshells or the cysts in scientific language. So the cysts will just contain the shrimps like that for as much as it's dry. So immediately when it rains, they get back to life. And you see a lot of flamingos, they'll be performing a dance-like movement on the pens. Actually, they are actually taking those shrimps on the surface out.
Okay.
Yeah, so those dens, they're actually taking the shrimps out on the surface so that they can feed on them. So it's a really interesting action, if you could say it. So those are one of the species that people will really love to come to Botswana to see.
Absolutely.
Yes, and they're facing a lot of challenges, like you have said. Most of the challenges being our rains. They can be late. which really disorientate their migration path, and some human space again. When humans, the farmers, the space of farms this side, that side in the Makgadikgadi areas, they're getting more and more into the pens. So which becoming a challenge for the flamingos and their breeding patterns as well. But generally for now, the flamingos are doing quite well. And most of them during off-breeding, like now before the rains, you see them around areas of Boka Dam, Gaborone Dam for feeding. Yes.
Nice.
Even by the sewage ponds, broadest and Pagani sewage ponds.
Well, I've given you where to go, bird lovers. And of course, welcome back to the Stars and Stripes radio show as we continue conversation. Fast running out of time. Busho, let me speak to you about vultures. I know vultures are not part of the migration season, but, I am well informed that they're endangered within the Republic of Botswana, or rather the region. Why does the world need vultures, and what is putting them in harm's way? Why have we gotten to the point where we can classify them as endangered species?
Yes, thank you so much once again. So vultures, like you mentioned, they're very important species in the ecosystem. Actually, in simple terms, we refer them as our garbage collectors. Yes, because now and then we have, droughts or animals dying due to diseases. And most of the time we don't see those carcasses laying around, smelling and stuff like that. Who takes them away? The vultures. So that's where they actually come in. Apart from also offering the tourism opportunities, people come all the way to come and see our vultures. And yes, they are threatened because of a number of challenges. But the challenge that we'll normally hear of is that of poisoning.
Yes.
Poisoning of vultures can be in two ways, direct and indirect. And again, going back to the farmers, the farmers, they have a very good relationship with birds, of course, like we've been talking throughout the show. And now, farmers, they have challenges from predators. Predators meaning the hyenas, the jackals, the lions and stuff like that. For sometimes when these predators have actually killed the animal, they resort to using poison to actually deal with the predator.
Okay.
So now, when an animal is lying there, it calls for the vultures to come and do their work. So now, when that particular carcass have been poisoned in the intention to kill the predator, definitely the vultures die from that poison. So that is one of the that is one of the main challenges that vultures are facing in poisoning. And the direct ones being the effects of poaching.
Yes.
Whenever there is a carcass lying somewhere, vultures will circle around,
Yes,
in thermals to actually alert other vultures and other other raptors that there is a carcass lying somewhere. So the poachers have been clever enough to pick that. Vultures are actually signaling that there is something somewhere on the ground. So after that activity of poaching, when maybe example they've killed an elephant, they do their stuff.
Yes.
From there, then they will poison the carcass. With the intentions of trying killing as much vultures as they can, so that they cannot signal as they always do. So those are the main challenges that we have with our vulture populations in Botswana. So definitely a single carcass of an elephant can kill more than 300 vultures.
Jesus.
So I think that's the obvious reasons why you see
the numbers are accelerated.
Exactly. Yeah. And it really called for a concern, a conservation concern. So that's why they are highly endangered.
Well, it's Gabs FM Power to Engage Your World. On the other side of this, we'll be asking our guests to share their parting statements. As we learn so much, I've learned so much. I had no idea the relationship and the role that birds play in my everyday life.
The Stars and Stripes show is brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.
Well, it's Gabs FM Power to Engage Your World. And of course, I'm so happy I feel like I'm educated and I know a little bit of what's going on. Dr. Moses, let me bring you back as Botswana, as a leader in terms of understanding research and development in this conservation space. Just share your parting statement in line with Botswana understanding the importance of World Migration Day.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, like we said, Botswana need to be aware that these birds play a critical role in maintaining stability in our ecosystems. We will try to do a lot of education with schools and with adult conservation clubs around the world, around the country. I think I need to emphasize, I think when you use vultures as an example, people seem to understand it very well. Like if we have only 5 out of 23 vulture species in the world. And of these 5, 3 of them are listed as critically endangered.
3 of them?
Yes.
Jeez. That's a big number.
And one of them is endangered, and we have 1 vulnerable. So this gives you an indication of what, and then the other important thing is that vultures actually play a very big role in terms of controlling disease transmission.
Wow.
If an animal dies of rabies, anthrax, or whatever, if it's not disposed from the environment by vultures, other scavengers are going to eat it and then they spread the disease. But vultures, they are so specialized that when they eat this, they don't actually spread the disease. The disease will disappear from the environment. So it's important to keep some of these, actually all of these species. They are not migratory like we said, but they cover a lot of ground.
Yes.
We have some tags on some of the beds. They travel as far as Mozambique, as far go to Namibia and all the southern Africa. So it's very important to maintain ecosystem by protecting our wildlife.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for gracing the Gabs FM studio. I think I'm going to extend another invitation for you to come on the show and just educate Botswana about, the role that bird life plays. I think it's such an important conversation. It's one that I personally overlook. But interesting enough, there is a black swift bird. I don't know if you know it, Doc. All I know is the only bird that can swim into a waterfall. Very rare. Very rare. I just want to let these other birds, and I'm definitely going to do my own research to find out what the swift bird contributes to our everyday life. Ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, it's the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. Good afternoon.
The Stars and Stripes show was brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.